CMMS Radio talks about all things CMMS, computerized maintenance management software, focused on maintenance management. It's the people, the process, and the culture that make your CMMS journey a success. Thanks for tuning in. Today, we are joined once again by Danny Koontz, and we're going to talk about some cool stuff. He's got some plans coming up, possibly next 60 days. We're going to talk about that. But first of all, Danny Koontz, welcome back to CMMS Radio.
Thank you so much, sir. I appreciate you having me. It's a pleasure.
Always, always. And I think, you and I stay in touch. We do that on LinkedIn. And one of the things I wanted to jump into right away is RFMA. You received the Lifetime Achievement Award, and that was, about 2-3 weeks ago? Something like that?
Yeah, in Las Vegas. Yes, sir.
Yeah, and I wanted to kind of hear about, what that's all about, what that recognition was like, what that particular conference means to you.
Well, I think a few things. I was the last original person that went to a meeting at Darden 22 years ago that said, hey, we want to create an organization for facilities. And the only reason I went at the time, it's kind of funny now, but I went to my boss and said, hey, I want to go to a meeting at Darden. She's like, why? I said, well, they're talking about facility organization. She goes, you don't have time to be dealing with that. And I'm like, no, it's really cool. I'm going to sit next to the Fridays guy, the Darden guy, the Applebee's guy, the Hooters guy, all these people. If nothing else, I can pick their brain. I can steal some really good ideas that will help me in my current job. And if I get anything else out of it, that's just a plus. And that's really the reason I went. And so I was the only person that was still left that was still active in RFMA that was in that meeting. And it was going to be my last RFMA. And we'll talk about that. But I had asked Debbie Kidsell, the executive director, I said, this is a little out of the ordinary, but at the conference, would you give me 5 minutes? And I'd like to thank a lot of people who've helped me during my career in association with RFMA. And she said, yes. What they didn't tell me was that I was going to be the recipient of the award, Lifetime Achievement. So when Tracy Thompson, who used to be the executive director, got up and started speaking, I thought she was introducing me to give a 5-minute farewell, and that was it. And then she proceeded to tell me that I had won this award, and evidently everybody in the room knew it but me. So how you keep something in 1,000 people and don't tell me, I have no idea, but they did. And I was really shocked. And it was an honor. RFMA's meant a ton to me. I've worked really hard in the organization for 20 years, doing anything needed. I served on the board. I was a chairman. I've worked on the advisory council, and currently I work on a RFMA Gives committee. And so I've been heavily involved for a long time, and seen it grow from basically starting to where it is today, and met a lot of really great people and developed some incredible friendships. And to be recognized in any form, much less an award that they don't hardly ever give out, was really special. And I think the thing is, Greg, is one, I have incredible friends. I had friends who flew to Vegas just for the ceremony, 6 of them the night before. That was off the chart, special. And the ability to thank a lot of people who had helped me in different ways was just it. But it's been a huge part of my life. I was thrilled, and just the ending, to hopefully good career. And I think I hang my hat on being transparent and being real. You get what you get with me. I don't fluff. I don't dance. That's not my style. up front, and I think that pays off sometimes, and it has for me. I'm real, you get it, and talk about it. I have an understanding of the customer because I was that customer for a long period of time, a deep understanding of customer needs. And I think that's important. But I just think being true and being transparent is huge. But I was absolutely shocked and thrilled.
Yeah. Well, I say congratulations. Everybody does. But, we've talked a few different times. I've had you on the podcast, and
Sure.
we understand how far back your career goes, even beyond those years with
Sure.
RFMA. And I think when we say congratulations, we're trying to say a hell of a lot more when it comes to your approach to how you work with, maybe as the customer, with your vendors that are providing you service at the different locations you've managed, which is at this point countless. I mean, we would have to really do a lot of research to figure out the total count of facilities you've been involved in managing, teams you've helped build. And I think being plugged into that community and being there because you want to help put that whole story together for everyone. Where are you at on your journey? Are you a customer? Are you a provider? Are you somewhere in between? How can we be better? And I want to switch to a different question.
Sure.
Something hit the LinkedIn feed today, and I wanted to actually ask you about it because I think it's a really important subject. And I'm talking about when it comes to management styles, because you've been at different levels within organizations. You've worked to enable and empower teams and understand what they really need, but also no game playing, really leading out front with how you talk about transparency and the value of that transparency. It speaks to integrity, and you're willing to be vulnerable enough to just say, hey, this is how it is. And if you don't like it, I get it, but I'm not going to sugarcoat a bunch of stuff. I'm not going to play a lot of those tap dancing games where I tell you one thing, but I'm really up to something else. And that reminds me of that concept of telling versus teaching your managers. When you have managers that you need to make really, really good at what they do, who they serve, and what the whole thing is all about, what's that telling versus teaching really about, and why is it so important?
I think the way I looked at it was I was both. When I started as a manager, I was a teller because I had been told, throughout my young journey at Ruby Tuesday, and I was told, do this, do that. That's okay. There's my introduction to management, and I thought, okay, that's how you do it. And I was a teller. As my team progressed and I grew a little bit, and with help from others who were above me, I morphed into being much more of a teacher, not a teller. And some of that, Greg, it's a funny story, but it was at the request of my own team. And one of my team came into my office one day after I'd done a presentation in front of about 200 managers. And as I always left the meeting, I said, when you're in doubt and you don't know who to call, you call me. I don't care what it's about. But if you don't know who to call, you call me. And we were walking away, and one of the folks on my team said, you got a minute? And I said, sure. And he said, can we go in your office and shut the door? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, uh-oh. So we get in there, and he said, do you know who you are? And it was a weird, strange question. And of course, I hit it with humor, and I picked up my business card, and I said, well, I'm not sure, but it says on the front, I'm Danny W. Koontz. That's what it says. Maybe that's not me, but that's what it says. He said, no. Do you know who you are? And I still didn't get it. I didn't get it. And I'm like, come on, tell me. He goes, you're Danny blanking. I'll leave out the blanking part. Koontz. And he said, everybody knows you. Everybody trusts you. People would tell you things they'd never tell anybody else. However, When you leave meetings and you tell folks that if you got to make a call, make it to me, none of us on your team who support you will ever have the opportunity to build that with the restaurant people. And I got really quiet. And he said, "You're mad." I'm not mad at all. I'm reflecting on how right you really are. And I need to change and rephrase how I say that. And a couple other things, I need to understand that you guys can get it done. And I need to be a little less hands-on and a little more forward thinking, helping when needed, finding better ways, and so on. And it's a long story, and I apologize for that, but I think it taught me that, okay, it's time. Now you need to be a teacher. Don't be a teller. The only reason, Greg, I think I told you this the last time, the only reason I traveled every week to Ruby Tuesday restaurants, every Ruby Tuesday restaurant looked the same. I knew them like the back of my hand all over the country. I could write down a list of repairs before I ever got out of the parking lot. Every restaurant in America has tile and grout problems. Find one that doesn't, that means it's brand new. It will. I could write, I mean, you just knew what the problems were. That wasn't the reason I went to do store visits. I went to do store visits with the manager because I'm going to make he or she walk me through and around their building. And I'm not pointing out anything. I'm going to make them point out to me what's wrong. And if while standing there, I can show them what's wrong and how to fix it, I've got them for life. For life. I didn't send them a bullet point email. I didn't send them pictures and tell them to study. I stood 5 feet away and said, "This is your problem. And if you will do X, it will fix Y." That's how you do it. And then you help teach while you're there. And then I would get in the car with the director who had 8 stores or 10 stores.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd just ride and talk. And I'd find out, are they committed to the company? Do they have an ulterior motive? Do they believe in what we're doing? Where are they? It's amazing what driving around for 5 or 6 hours in a day or so will get you. But information that not to use against them, but just to understand. Because there's going to be a night when something bad's really going to happen in one of their stores. It's going to catch on fire. We're going to have water heater break, something. And I got to talk to them. And I need to know, where are they? Where's their head? That's the reason I traveled, was to do that, not the other. So I learned how to be a teacher and stay out. When my team was rolling out Service Channel at Ruby Tuesday, I had signed an agreement that during all the meetings that they had when Service Channel came to town, I didn't go to any of the meetings. I couldn't enter the room because it wasn't the whole rollout took 18 months. That's too slow, not fast enough, not quick enough, so on for me. But to do it right, that's the time frame we needed. Mm-hmm. And so it would have done no good for me to appoint people on my team to go in there and lead and then walk in there and cut them off at the knees. That's the worst thing you can do. So my habit would be to go in there and go, "Come on, let's go, let's move." Okay, so I signed an agreement that it cost me X amount of money if I ever walk in one of those meetings. Well, I didn't. And it went off like clockwork. I mean, we had issues, obviously. But anything you roll out 900 stores, you're going to have issues. But,
of course.
But our plan worked. And that was more putting people into roles and then letting them do it, which is what I always wanted and I had to learn how to give it up and let other people do it.
That's really interesting, appropriate, and it's incredible guidance, because it's probably the biggest barrier to someone becoming an effective leader, manager, supervisor, is how to let things unfold and have enough self-awareness to not intervene when you know this is about to happen. I can stop this right now and I can fix this right now, because your real goal, again, it's hard. It sounds easy, but it's hard to kind of keep yourself in check when you want to allow someone to stumble a little bit, figure a few things out so that they can become their absolute best. Because what you're trying to do is build leaders within the different locations and the regions, the districts, etc., that not only have some of those capabilities you bring to the table, but also who and what they are and what they stand for. And that's really interesting. I also like what you said about the deployment of the platform across so many locations. So many organizations and even the vendors providing the solutions might say, hey, we can get this done this quick. Boom, 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 boom. It does not usually work that way. It's a great idea. We would love if that was true. But when you take the time to essentially do it right, nothing's going to be perfect. That's just not going to happen. That's anybody out there that says, hey, we're going to get this CMMS or whatever kind of facilities management software, and we're going to deploy it across even 9 locations, sometimes 1 location.
Sure.
You could have the best plans. Something's going to happen. Something's going to go wrong. And as long as everybody's kind of plugged in, same page, talking the same language, after the same outcomes, you'll get that done. But it's going to take a longer period of time to really create a sustainable deployment across that many locations. And 18 months is not terrible for 900 locations, if you ask me. Plenty of people might say I'm wrong, but there's different levels to this deployment. Is it launched and people can put in work orders? Sure, you're partially deployed, but do we have equipment? Do we have this? Do we have that? So I like that you caught on to, hey, I got to stay out of this. I want it done faster. I know it can be done if I'm involved, but letting it kind of happen. That's really more about allowing, empowering, and enabling these people to actually do what you hired them to do in the first place, right?
Yeah, it's about knowing yourself. And one of the roles that you were speaking earlier is I got to let my folks get to the edge of the mountain. Now they can't fall, but if they're at the edge and they're holding on to the rope, okay, then I can jump in and help. But they're going to get to the very edge of the cliff by themselves, and then I'll help them. I won't let them fall, but I'll let them go to where they see the ground below, and then I'll help, because that's how you learn. If a lot of people, if you'll jump in the middle of it, they'll let you, and they'll do that for a reason. If I just stumble around for a day or two, he'll come in here and tell me what to do, and then I don't have to worry about it. Mm-hmm. And if it goes wrong, it'll be his fault because he's the one that told me. There are people that are that way.
Oh yeah,
I never wanted that, and so you change your question when people come into your office and say, "What do you want me to do?" Your question as a teacher becomes, "What do you want to do? What do you think we ought to do?" Because I'm not going to tell you. Before we leave the room, you're going to convince yourself of your own plan. I'm just going to help guide you. That's all.
Yes.
But I'm not going to tell you what to do. And I had to learn that because, again, I was young and barely out of college. They said, okay, you're going to manage this and you're going to manage some people. And all I ever knew is I worked in the warehouse and got yelled at every day. I thought that's how life worked.
Yeah.
And so you're a teller. Do this, do that, and so on. And then I learned, and I think it was important to put that out there of, whatever you are, here's where you want to end up being. It's okay to be a teller. It is. What you want to learn to long term is to morph into a teacher and be a teacher.
I like it. Let's switch gears a little bit. And I always got to kind of bring this into the mix, but you've seen technology in facilities management, some of the related spaces, vendor management, all of this. Do you yourself have a specific, I guess I want to say secret, but more so piece of typical guidance you would give anyone on that journey to get better user adoption from your frontline team that has to use this new software that you're bringing in to manage things?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. And in my current company, we manage a bunch of them because we have to. You get a customer, whatever platform they have, that's suddenly one of yours, and you've got to get it.
You're
You
talking
got
about
to get it.
WCE, right? Windy City
Yeah,
Equipment. Yep.
right. Sure. At WCE, you get a new customer, and they say, "Okay, we're on platform XYZ." Okay, so are we.
Yep.
Now, and so you have to manage, and they're all different. I think one of the things that I found that's really important, and always tried to, was I just wanted to have a conversation with the person on the other end who worked for the CMMS platform to talk, not just assume that, okay, everything's going to be like the way it is with company X and we'll just go down that road. But because it's not. And there are varying degrees. When it first came out, okay, here's a platform. We have vendors, you have vendors, you can use your own. And then if you do this and you just do work orders through it, and that's kind of it. It's a lot more today. You have companies, okay, we're going to help the customer. We're going to be a quasi facility management team for them. Or in some cases today, we're going to run the whole thing. We're not going to be a quasi, we're going to run it for them. And so those are three different ways of managing and adapting to. And I think you have to take time to talk to the person on the other side. I had a conversation with a huge third party provider. And the comment was, he called and he said, "Danny, your first time fix is not at a level that we want. So it's not at a level I want either." He said, "Well, what are you going to do about it?" I said, "Under the restrictions you have set up for me to manage this customer, I can't. So I'm going to give you a very simple answer. It's impossible." He said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "My NTE is the NTE that the customer has set for all services is less than my charges to get to the front door. Not do any work, just get there. I can't do anything. You will never get first time fix number right." And he's like, "Well, we tried to talk to the customer and they didn't want to raise the rate. They didn't want to raise the NTE." I said, "That's your fault. That's your fault. You agreed to take on this customer and help them learn what to do. Saying we couldn't get them to move is your fault. And then to pick up the phone to call me and say, you're not getting it done, it's impossible. That's like handing my wife $20 and ask her to go buy groceries for a week. That won't work. You can try everything you want to try, but it doesn't work. It's impossible. You can't drive 750 miles on one tank of gas. It's impossible. Same thing here. When it costs me more to get to your location than what the NTE is, I can't do first time fix. Everything will be a quote. And what does that cost you? More downtime, more aggravation, more work on your behalf to get a quote, get it approved, us to get the parts, come back, and more fees. Because every time I come to your building, I charge you fees. I'm trying to help you. And so I think it was really after that long conversation, and I'm passionate about NTEs. I understand the reason for them, but they need to be right. As a facility manager, I've had that conversation now being on WCE side and said, explain to me why a toaster and an air conditioner have the same NTE. Just tell me that. They're both 250. Make that make sense to me. Because they don't. You get a toaster doesn't work, you toast bread on the griddle till the toaster gets fixed. That's how it works. Air conditioner, you don't have it, there's no air. Simply put. And now that you have these third-party platforms and they have so much material, go figure out what your average air conditioning cost is during the summer. Make that your NTE. That's backed up with data. Go talk to your finance team or the people that NTEs are a good thing if they're done the right way.
Well,
but if they're just a stopgap to quit anybody spending money, it will ultimately cost you more money and more trouble.
Absolutely. Those not to exceed amounts are, when they're too general, are a barrier to moving forward, to keeping things going. And
to get
it doesn't make
done.
any sense.
Yeah. I said to a customer, tell me how many $1,500 and below air conditioning quotes in the summer that you've not approved in the last 5 years. One. because you were closing it. One, why are we wasting time putting a proposal together and send it to you when 99.9% of the time you're approving it? Why? Just change your NTE to 1500 and let's be done. You can change it back after summer or whatever. You can do whatever you want, but you have all this data that's going to show you what the average cost is, and you're approving 99.9% of our quotes. Why are we wasting time? This is only costing you money. I think that point, though, to answer your big question is you've got to get in there and talk to the providers. You made a deal with this customer. What'd you tell them? What'd you promise them? What are you going to do? Lower their cost? Because this doesn't work. This doesn't lower their cost. You're raising their cost. And what are you supposed to be doing for them? We had another customer. They got rid of their whole facility department. They had no one left.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "What are you going to do?" He said, "We're turning it all over to the third party provider." I'm like, okay, who's going to manage it for you? They are. You're seriously wrong, or you got sold a bill of goods. They are not going to do that. There still has to be a person from your end that is managing through the system. But that they had been, I think they got sold it. But we're not going to have anybody. We're just turning over them. That isn't how it works.
I think that's the dream that doesn't necessarily exist. You can get kind of close, but you gotta have somebody internal that's very plugged into that process. And even with that, I tell everyone, you still have to have a succession plan. You've got to have some way to keep that going, because we'd love the idea that, hey, we got this third party vendor and they're going to do everything and we don't have to hear about it. We just pay our bill every month. And I love the idea. I think we all love the idea, but it just doesn't typically work that way. It doesn't work that way with software. You got to be involved with and manage your software. You got to keep people accountable, not get them in trouble, make sure it makes sense as to why we're using CMMS or why are we using a third-party vendor to handle all of our facilities operations. Well, it's because we were having trouble with turnover. We were having trouble with this and all that, but somebody internally at the company has to work with that third-party vendor constantly. Sure. Be aware. I want to switch it up a little bit.
Sure.
This is all good stuff as usual, Danny. I want to ask, what is your biggest piece of kind of advice or guidance for frontline team members to really show up for their team? Meaning, is there any like little takeaway or something you've learned in your career that can help that individual contributor realize or become even better for their team?
I think one thing, and this is probably a lesson learned at Windy City after not ever really being on the service side, but knowing it from afar, but not being in it every day. People ask a lot of questions. I do. I'm a customer service person who works on behalf of the customers. Mm-hmm. I'm asking tons of questions. To the people on the front lines and the people in the office or on the teams that are doing that, understand the reason I'm asking the questions. I'm not challenging you. I'm not challenging your work. I'm not doing any of that. I want to know the why. The better I know the why, the better I can go back and explain to a customer that here's your price, here's the reason it's done this way, here's this is why it took 3 trips to get the job done. Whatever that is, I'm not necessarily questioning you. I'm asking you because you're the best person that's informed of what happened or is happening to provide me information, to help me. Too many times people take that when you're asking a question, it's a direct, why are they asking? Your kids do it all the time. You ask them a question, why are you asking? And it's the same kind of thing. And they'll either get defensive or they don't want to give you the info because they're not understanding. And maybe a part of that's on me to learn how to do it better. But I'm asking questions to help me get to an answer and a response that I need. If I don't know how other people work, but if I have an issue with a particular individual that I need an answer, and there are reasons beyond just general knowledge, I'm just going to tell them up front. I think you've handled this wrong, and we're going to have a conversation
Yeah.
today
Yeah.
and talk about it. I'm going to tell you up front that I got a problem with this, and I want to talk about it because I have to answer to the customer. Unless you would like to call the customer and answer, and they don't want to do that. So, okay, now we're going to have a conversation. I think for the frontline people is most of the day when you're in the service industry and you're not at work, you're a customer of somebody. You're a grocery store customer. You're going to buy clothes. You're buying a car. Whatever you're doing, you're a customer. When you're at work and your customer is asking questions, trade places. Think like a customer. People, and if you're trying to figure out, should I tell them something? Okay, if you reverse the role, would you want to know what you're that you have on your plate? Then if
Nice.
you would, then do that. But most of the time, you're a customer. Think like they do. Well, isn't that big a deal? Well, it's not a big deal to you, but it's a big deal to them.
That's right.
And there may be many reasons that's causing it to be a big deal, which aren't even affecting what you're talking about. There's something else behind it that's a much bigger reason.
Well, that gets back to that transparency and the power of transparency. It doesn't mean there's not a risk. Of course there's a risk, but the value that comes from it and how you can move forward with clients, with frontline workforce, with managers, with leaders. And I'm kind of all about that, but I do know it's hard and it's challenging and it's risky and more self-awareness. But I love this idea that you've shared about, don't forget what it's like to be the customer and just occupy those shoes, and it'll make a lot more sense and you'll actually end up delivering even better service. So I think that's an awesome way to kind of wind down. I want to, first of all, thank you for joining me again.
My pleasure.
And I also want to congratulate you, not just on the award, but I think you're heading towards a new chapter in life that we talked about a little bit. And it's already out there. I've seen it on the LinkedIn and some of the posts. Yeah. So I know you're going to do like a kind of a quasi retirement. Our real deal people don't like really retire, but they increase the amount of golf or whatever it is they do, and then pick up an occasional project or stay in the mix. I hope we still get to see you
Sure.
out here, doing the podcast, or maybe even jumping on here once in a great while when you have time. I just want to wish you the best and thank you for everything that you've done, but also thank you for sharing how you've grown and how other people could potentially use that strategy.
Well,
Danny.
I think I certainly appreciate all that, Greg. It's a pleasure to be on the show. I think the thing of treat people like you want to be treated always matters, and you hear it all the time, but it really does matter, and that's kind of the way that I've always tried to look at it, and had tons of people that helped me, and I wouldn't be in the role I'm in today and wouldn't have had the career I have today without a ton of those people who were mentors and who helped me. And again, I said before at the beginning, I got the greatest group of friends and supporters in the world, bar none. They're the best in the world, and I've learned a ton from them. They're direct and they're honest, just like me. They just say it and come up and say you're wrong. Okay, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
And that's how you build really strong relationships. And now I'm going to plug around. I'm still talking. We may continue FM Corner. We're not sure yet. We're working on it. Might continue that even after I retire. But I'm going to do some things to help people, and I can't sit home all day long. I got to go do something. I'm just not going to do the full-time piece. I've done that all my life, and now it's time to kind of turn it over. But I think I can do some teaching to others and helping with some information to others, and just talk and as people have done for me. And I'm very blessed. Very blessed.
Yeah. Well, Danny, thank you for joining me once again, and we'll be staying in touch for sure. And we're going to wrap this one up. Danny Koontz, you can find him on LinkedIn, and a couple more months, he'll be doing a little more golfing, but he'll still be around. Thanks, Danny.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Greg. Thank you.
Did you find this episode helpful? Please send us some feedback, suggest a topic, or ask a question. Reach out to CMMS Radio if you need a co-pilot on your CMMS project. Visit CMMSradio.com and use the What's on Your Mind link. Thank you for tuning in to CMMS Radio, your resource for all things CMMS, from selection to implementation, to help you make better choices, learn from industry experts, and have a successful CMMS journey.